In a quiet village surrounded by mustard fields and dusty roads, lived Kunti Devi, a simple widow who had raised her only son, Pankaj, with love, struggle, and silent prayers. Life had not been kind to her. She had lost her husband early, but her son had become the light that kept her world warm. Pankaj worked as a salesman in a sari shop in the nearby city. He earned little, but his dreams were big, to see his mother healthy, smiling, and proud. When he learned that her eyesight was fading due to cataract, he convinced her to leave the village and stay with him in the city. For the first time in years, Kunti Devi stepped into a world of bright lights and noise. The city scared her a little, but when she looked at her son's face, she felt safe. He promised to get her treated, to help her see clearly again. It was a small dream, but for her, it meant the world. Days passed in quiet peace. Pankaj worked long hours at the sari shop. He was good with people, polite, honest, and cheerful, and the shop owner trusted him deeply. Every morning, Kunti Devi made tea for him, waiting by the small window until he disappeared down the lane. Every night, she kept his dinner ready, lighting a small lamp before the idol of Lord Vishnu and praying for her son's safety. But outside, an invisible storm was gathering, one that would test every ounce of her faith. News spread of a deadly illness sweeping through cities. Shops were closing. People were panicking. And yet, Pankaj kept working, because survival left no room for fear. One evening, Pankaj returned home late. His face was pale, his steps unsteady. Kunti Devi, startled, placed her hand on his forehead. It was burning hot. By midnight, his fever rose higher. His breathing grew shallow. There were no neighbors around, people had locked themselves inside. Kunti Devi sat beside her son, dipping a cloth in cold water again and again, pressing it to his head. All night, she prayed in silence, whispering old mantras, trembling between faith and fear. The next morning, she tried to call for help. But no one opened their doors. She watched her son struggling to breathe, his lips turning pale, his chest heaving. Her heart pounded in helpless terror. When love sees suffering, fear becomes strength. Kunti Devi decided she would not let her son die at home. She wrapped him in a blanket, somehow lifted his body onto a handcart left on the roadside, and began pushing it toward the hospital, alone. The streets were empty. The city that once roared with noise now echoed with silence. Dust blew through the air, the sky hung heavy with dread. Every passing vehicle ignored her waving hands. She shouted for help, her voice breaking. But no one stopped. Her feet bled. Her back ached. Yet she pushed on, whispering, just a little farther, my child. Hours later, she reached the hospital gates, half collapsed from exhaustion. The hospital was overflowing. Patients lay in corridors, on benches, even outside under tarpaulin sheets. Doctors and nurses ran in every direction, their faces hidden behind masks and fear. Kunti Devi cried for help, holding her son's hand. But there were no beds. No oxygen. No hope. A guard told her, there's no space left. She didn't understand, how could there be no space for life? She sat on the floor beside her son, fanning him with her sari, calling out his name softly. When he gasped for breath, she lifted him in her arms, whispering prayers she barely remembered. Her tears fell on his face, as if trying to cool his burning skin. A nurse walked past and turned away. A doctor shook his head. But a mother doesn't give up. Kunti Devi begged everyone she could find. Some said oxygen cylinders were available 40 kilometers away, but they cost more than she could ever afford. She looked at her hands, the same hands that had once fed her child, now trembling with emptiness. For a moment, she closed her eyes and whispered, if my breath could become his, take mine instead. As the night deepened, her body weakened, but her faith grew stronger. She prayed not with words, but with her soul. And sometimes, faith travels faster than medicine. Just before dawn, an older doctor, exhausted but kind, noticed her sitting there. he walked over, listened, and saw her son's fading pulse. Something in that mother's eyes, that mix of pain, prayer, and stubborn love, moved him. Without asking for money or permission, he carried Pankaj inside and began treatment. An oxygen cylinder, and 4 drip, and hope, that's all it took to begin a battle against death. For hours, Kunti Devi waited outside the emergency room, clutching her hands together, whispering the same prayer again and again. By morning, the nurse came out. "He's stable now." Tears rolled down her cheeks. For her, those words were nothing less than a blessing from heaven. Days passed. Pankaj slowly recovered, weak but alive. When he finally opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was his mother sitting beside his bed, her eyes red but full of peace. He couldn't speak, she didn't need him to. Their silence spoke 1,000 words, of love, of struggle, of unbroken faith. A week later, the doctor discharged him. As they walked out of the hospital, the city still looked wounded, but for Kunti Devi, the world had begun to bloom again. Back in their small room, she lit a lamp and thanked every god she knew. She looked at her son, frail, breathing slowly, but smiling, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. That night, she finally slept without fear. Outside, the sky was clear, and the stars looked brighter, as if the heavens themselves were celebrating her victory. The moral: they say faith can move mountains. But a mother's love can move the heavens. Kunti Devi was not rich, not educated, not powerful, but she possessed the one force stronger than any disease, the will to protect her child. Her tears became prayers. Her prayers became miracles. And her love became life. Whenever the world feels dark and hopeless, remember this truth: some battles are not won in hospitals or with medicines. They are won in the hearts of mothers who refuse to give up. Dizzy.